back and forth, you know, sometimes, like a two-fisted drinker.
So we're here, we've all got our coffee.
Looks pretty good.
Today we're talking about it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I love this.
It's a great topic.
I love this topic because actually when I first started this, and why I included a chapter about it in my book, was purely for the reason that it's the instigator of everything. And just this one thing, when you are aware of your thoughts and how much meaning you give to everything, you just have to listen to that little what's going on inside. It's the internal process you have to listen to. And it totally transformed my life. That one thing totally transformed everything for me. But I mean, when we did Manifesting Mastery, there was the lesson of it doesn't mean anything. And 20 say just have a look around the room. We give meaning to every single thing we see. We pass judgment on every person we see, whether we realize it or not. I mean, we even take meaning to people, and we can hear their voice speak in our heads. I mean, that's a marvel. That's really clever.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, we can actually, our internal process can speaks to us in their voice, and it created so much awareness. And when you realize something doesn't have meaning, you then know how to apply the meaning that you want in order to get your desire. So it's eliminating and eradicating the crap out, well, it was for me, in order to bring space into my internal process so that I had room to say, okay, what is it that I do want to think? What do I want to process? What do I want to have in my life? And it's such a magnificent, spectacular change, but it's also really subtle. Does anyone else find that?
Well,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when we are placing our faith in an outside thing, like you say, it becomes the filter that we see everything else through. So if it's someone becomes vegan or veg, I was on that bandwagon for a long time of being very strict about vegetarian and diet, and it can also impact because you'll want to gravitate toward people who are like you, but at the same time it creates judgments about people who are not. So there's no space to accept other people, as you want to keep changing them and making them be like what you have. You know, no one wants to drink alone, you know, so we want to get people on our side with things. So if you're into, you know, crystals, or you're into goddesses, or you're into other things, but it can also make you want to see everything in the terms of using that thing. So when you can step back from that and really see things in their own pure light, it's very powerful. It is a huge change to be able to do that. And then you relate to people in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And do you ever notice that a lot of the time, I mean, I'm only speaking from my experience, but it's almost like the meanings I apply are so negative, you know, which is a meaning. I'm applying a meaning that it's negative, right? But it doesn't feel good. Most of the time when I catch myself and I'm like, I'm applying a meaning here that is not feeling good, I run into that. I realize that more frequently than I do, oh, I'm applying a great meaning to this thing. You see what I'm saying? Because we're applying meaning to everything. But if when you finally
yourself.
Yeah, and when you finally understand, oh, I'm doing this, I'm the cause of this, you start noticing those bad meanings, per se, the bad ones, or the ones that just don't feel good, that you want to eliminate. And I think that's very powerful when you recognize that and you start understanding that about yourself, and that's what you're doing. And if you want life-changing results, that's where you start.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think traditionally that, you know, there is this thing called the search for meaning that humans have since the dawn of time practically look for a meaning or a higher purpose or a higher meaning in something. But what's happened is, as we've become more like isolated and alienated and less bonded as communities, it's caused that. I think it takes away from the positive side of it, and it's made people be more shrunk up and more negative and felt more disconnected. So that's where why I think we tend toward the negative. But being fearful about that can be a collective thing too. So there's always this, you know, putting meaning into things can definitely have that kind of effect on yourself, like you're saying, that you put, you know, if you want to give an example or whatever, you know.
Well, I've got a Neville Goddard quote here. I did have. And it's all about moving into state, and about you change the thought into what you do want. So the quote from Neville Goddard is, "Don't condemn yourself for the state into which you have fallen. If you don't like it, simply move into another." And that's exactly, you can use that not with state, but with your thoughts. You can separate your thought and simply change it. You just think, it doesn't mean what I think it does. And you simply change it into the thought that you want to keep yourself, your state, on track.
I love that. You know, that's yeah.
My interpretation.
Well, yeah, Lene, how's that sound to you? I think that's very much, you know, that this, like, if you don't like it, you can change it, but it's like really true. People don't realize you can do this.
How easy it is. Exactly.
And that it's easy. You don't like it. If you don't like the state, you know, so instead people get into a state and they go further in and further down and further down and further down, because they don't think it's possible to shift it that easily. And we do mistrust something that that it's easy. We tend to expect things to not be easy, to be very difficult, you know.
Because you, past tense, I always believed I had to earn something. When us ladies have spoke about money, and we actually put a post up on Facebook, didn't we, on our Two Comma Coffee Club Facebook page about money. It's actually grounded into you that if you want something, you have to earn it. And that's how it's always been. So we don't believe that it's simple to just change that thought, because actually we've been conditioned to think in a certain way since we were born.
Well, that's right. Lene, I bet you'd agree with this too. What's the expression we always would hear? You got to pay your dues. You got to pay your dues. You got to struggle. You got to earn it. And I've started so many different things over the years thinking, oh my God, I got to start paying my dues again. You know, it's like, oh, I got to this point, but I'm starting this new thing. Now I got to pay my dues again and prove that I can earn it, you know? And it's like, you always feel like you're going back to square one, paying your dues. But it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Or you feel stuck in a place financially, and you think it's because you're not working hard enough, or you haven't
done enough. You're not worthy enough to get a good job, to work hard, or the harder you work, the more money you need, because you have a lifestyle you have to keep up pretenses with.
Exactly. And how
Yeah.
many times have you worked, like if you had a job where you know there's that person that goes above and beyond, and then the person who has been there forever and barely does anything, but they get paid the same or within the same range. So did it really make a difference how hard you worked versus not? So one person's obviously imagining that this is easy and I still get paid. And the other person's imagining I have to do this hardcore balls to the wall to get my paycheck.
Yeah.
Right? And they're in the
Yeah.
same job.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, it's like I would manifest over and over a lot of jobs where, you know, I was in a position, no, I didn't have helpers, you know, it was like, it was all around me and trying to please all these other people. So, you know, if I'd realized it, I could have manifested a whole different setup for myself if only I'd known that at the time. You know,
I always used
so-
to, I found that where I always put upon myself that because I'm the single parent, I've had to work double the amount all the time and I have to compensate. So everything, I believed everything was a struggle for so long. And actually it's not, it's easy. It's just because we've got these perceived belief about stuff because we really do believe that it's got to be hard, and in actual fact all the people that are watching this must actually be nodding thinking, oh my god, yeah, we how, I mean, how many times must we give meaning to something? Like, I don't know, like the example in my book, and I said, as you girls know, you've read it, that I automatically would hear the post come through the letterbox and assume, oh shit, more bills. And so ultimately, that's exactly what I'm going to keep getting through my post, because that is what I'm giving meaning to. So whatever we're giving life to is exactly what's going to show up for us, because that's what we're imagining. And it all stems from that very first imagine a thought. And actually, until you take notice of your thoughts, you don't realize how quickly you process these things and then how they show up, because it could just be a very fleeting image or a, oh, I wonder if, and it manifests, but you just don't realize it does until you become aware of your thought and you realize what you're giving meaning to. And so that's why this is really important. And it, when you're manifesting, this has to come at the beginning. You have to be able to differentiate your thoughts in order to make room for the ones that you want before you can do anything else.
Yeah. And you know what, when you, that story you give in your book about, you know, being triggered by hearing the mail, look at that. I mean, it's very Pavlovian response. You know, we get that because we get these triggers. So hear the mail, freak out, you know, or get the phone call, freak out, you know, because the expectation, like Lene was saying, is always goes toward the worst. It always goes toward the worst instead of just being either neutral, you know, oh, it's the phone, I wonder what it is. Oh, it's, oh, the postman, I wonder what I did. Or, wow, I'm getting something great. I only anticipate great, you know, because that's how I'm feeling. Not as an affirmation, but because
you feel it.
That's
right.
Yeah. And let's, when we talk about consciously manifesting, a huge block, which blocks are, you know, that's a meaning. But people in the manifesting community understand blocks, right? So a block could be the meaning you're applying to the thing you're trying to consciously manifest. If the meaning is, oh, it's bad for me to want that, but I'm just going to try to manifest it anyway. Do you really think? And if the thing shows up for you, then what's your reaction to that if your meaning is off?
right.
Yeah.
And it can get in people's way. from their desires, doing violence to your desires.
Have you got an example, Lene, that you've done?
Woo, put me on the spot. Yeah, probably like a lot of things. Well, I guess one would be, for instance, you know, my adventure of going from working class and working 9 to 5 to creating my business and taking off on that. I've run into the meanings of, you know, what does that look like? You know, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? How do people view that? And it feels icky and it almost embarrassing. Like I don't want to tell people about it because of the meaning I'm giving it, right? And it could be as simple as just thinking it means that I just am having a quarter life crisis or something. You know, I'm going off the deep end. And I, about 1.5 years ago, I had broken up with the guy that I'm with currently to go on, you know, just to find me, right? And the meaning I applied was, I mean, when I sat back and I thought, what am I doing? You know, I had this great relationship and now I'm just jumping ship and trying to do all these things. And then I just chalked it up to, I must be having a quarter life crisis. I'm about to turn 30. I must be just having, you know, one of those moments, instead of like seeing it as I needed a break. I wanted to be by myself for a while. You know what I mean?
You space,
Oh, yeah.
didn't you? Yeah. But we have to apply meaning because we're also fearful of what other people's meaning applies to our situation. And so not only do we fear we give meaning to something ourselves, we also apply meaning on top of that meaning because we're wondering, or we're assuming that that person's going to think something of us. It can be as simple as, like, I got my nose pierced and I thought, my God, I'm hitting 40 in March. People are going to think I'm having a midlife crisis.
Yep.
And straight away I revised it and thought, hell no, I'm getting younger. I'm enjoying myself. Just, you know what I mean? And I totally changed it. But for a very split second, straight away, I thought, everyone's going to think I'm having a midlife crisis. And they're going to be like, what next? What is she up to next?
And
Well,
those who struggle with revision, that's a really good way to attack that, is what was the meaning you were applying to the thing you're trying to revise? Change that meaning, it's done. I mean,
it's simple, yeah. Because when you look at revision, we can go on to that in a whole new topic, but people do assume again that that's hard because they're thinking, well, hang on, that's already happened. And if that's already happened, then that's got me to where I am now. So how can I revise that?
Which is a meaning.
Which is, I mean, that's what I mean. It's the meaning on top of the meaning. And so this is why
meaning inception.
Manifesting, we have to everybody must know that you have to eradicate meaning. And and it's actually when you are conscious of doing it and you can apply it and change it directly, it's so freeing, and it becomes very natural and a second nature. And Neville Goddard has always said that everything will happen naturally. So when you do it, it becomes natural. It's becoming natural for me. There are some points where I trip up, like, for example, I got a really late phone call the other night, and it was really, really late. And so straight away I thought, oh shit, what's wrong? Who is it? Is somebody hurt? Has somebody died? You know what I mean? Like, you think all of the worst things. And then I thought, Shell, it doesn't mean anything. Just answer the damn phone and find out, rather than assume all of this meaning. But the thoughts come like a domino effect, negatively, one on top of the other in a matter of seconds. And yet we're doing this all the time on autopilot, and we don't even take time to just be still and be aware of what we're thinking about and how it
Mhm.
really doesn't serve us.
That's right. And here's the other thing, because everybody is walking around to some degree coming up with stuff about things that happen. All right. So that means that when we're relating to them, if we're not aware that this is going on, we're walking around in our same cloud about it, that when we're trying to, we keep trying to go out and make somebody else happy or jump to what they need, because we're like, our story is responding to someone else's story. It's not seeing through that you can change that, you can revise it, you can be in your state, and the way they respond to you or you respond to them will be completely different. But so it's one set of stories trying to improve another, and that's why it never works, because like someone's always trying to keep their partner happy, and then the partner keeps, they're happy for 5 minutes. Oh, you got me this thing. But then that wears off and they want the next shiny object, or they want the next thing. So you're running out trying to get them something else. Maybe that will make them happy. Or they complain all the time, and you're always trying to deal with that. Because why? Because they of what they're believing.
Mm.
And we're trying to deal with that, where we're trying to deal with it externally, but that's not where we're going to really make the change.
That's right. It's got to come within, because again, the physical is the shadow, isn't it? It's the after effect of what we're imagining internally and what our thought process is.
That's right. And then there's a wonderful saying that a spiritual teacher said many years ago, and it's that you don't please God when you please others. You please God when you please yourself. And it took me, I heard this many moons ago, and when I was newish on the spiritual path, and it was really a hard thing to wrap my head around, because it sounds as if you're trying to please yourself, and that pleases God, and that sounds so selfish. And what about serving others, and the whole concepts that we think are part of this whole thing. But of course, what they were referring to is what we now understand as, I am God. I am, my imagination is the divine, is the operant power. So what's going to please God? That's me. That's in me when I please myself by what I'm doing. So it can't please me if I'm constantly trying to please someone else's concept of himself.
That's
It's
right.
only going to work if it's coming from within my state.
There's Neville's a quote from Neville was, stop believing in God and start believing as God.
Exactly. And that's where those two things meet, So that's very true. And when you understand that, and it's more than understand, because first it's kind of a concept, and then it's a little more intellectualized. So again, we're kind of making up stuff around it to kind of make it meaning, just to make it fit. And then it's, once you digest it, it's my whole thing about digesting stuff and understanding it and then being it, so it's kind of a process. It's a little bit of like, you have to metabolize it a little bit, but it's like, once it goes into you and you've absorbed it, it's like taking a vitamin, it's going to give you that energy, but it has to, it comes into you and becomes part of you. So that's it. And when it hits that point, then you're able to just live from that.
Mm.
And it's not, like you say, it's natural. Like Neville said, it has to be natural.
And if you notice, if you have some sort of ailment pop up with you, like for instance, I developed a lot of joint pain a couple months ago, and I applied a meaning to that. Oh, something's wrong with me. And then you hit Google, and you're going to find things to match that meaning. Oh yes, there's a whole list of things wrong with you.
You're going to be dying.
Yeah, cancer, dying, all of it. And it's funny because on the other hand, you can apply a meaning to something else and Google it and find support of that meaning. And you got two people with the same thing find the meaning and have that reaffirmed to them. So it's not that Google is the know-all, it's you are creating that meaning and you are seeing that reflected.
Totally.
On Google.
Yeah, that's right there on Google. Google is everybody's meanings being reflected back to them in half a second, you know.
Yeah, so if you want to see what you really mean on something, Google it and you will know. It's right there. You don't have to go very far.
Exactly. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the absolute truth?
So we've got a couple of minutes left. To wrap up, we want to ask our audience to use what we've given them today, and ask them to actually be aware of their thoughts and see what meaning that they're applying in their life in order to find space, in order to change the thought. So simply what we're asking them to do at home is to just be aware of your thoughts, and when you're aware of your trail of thought and you don't like that trail of thought, or you're aware of the negative, or that it isn't serving you in the right way for what you desire, simply simply stop, just be still and go, okay, so what is it that I do want? What do I wish? What is my desire? And change the thought in order to action that desire, in order to remain in the state of the wish fulfilled. So it's not homework, it's something for them to be able to do in order to alter their internal process so that they can manifest very easily. And this is a really core thing that they need to be able to do in order to manifest.
Yes, and they can ask us questions too if things come up, or they want to share the experience they had.
If we
and
also
it's a concept, if you're conceptualizing it and not doing anything with it, we're just over here talking, right? So experience it.
If we can also in the description, if we can add our email address, we're happy to reply to anybody that wants to email us about this for any help or support, for them to be able to do this, right?
Sure. It's the Two Comma Coffee Club at gmail.com. And they can message us on Facebook. They can post
join
a
our
question.
Facebook group.
Yes, and post a question there. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, join our Facebook group called Two Comma Coffee Club. So that's it for today, ladies.
Fantastic.
I've had a lovely coffee and a chat with you both.
Yes.
Done.
I'm done. I'm empty. And if anybody wants to keep update with us, then join us at our Facebook group.
Yeah,
Okay.
come join us and play with us over there. Okay, see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya. Bye. Thank you.